What are some common SOC Analyst job interview questions? In this video, you're going to learn 5 SOC Analyst job interview questions. So question number 1, what is a playbook, or sometimes it's also called a runbook, in a SOC? So a playbook basically consists of a set of guidelines that help you handle security incidents and alerts in the SOC. For example, if there were credentials compromised in a previous attack, the playbook would have information to help the Tier 1 or Level 1 SOC analyst know what actions they should take. In addition to that, oftentimes playbooks will be added to SIM solutions and other security tools. And so that way, as a potential incident is happening, the tool knows to respond a certain way or to alert a certain way to let people know that based on prior incidents or prior actions of a potential threat actor, this is the action you need to be taking. Question number 2, what is Splunk? Splunk is a SIM tool. It's used for searching, visualizing, monitoring, as well as reporting data. So basically it offers real-time insight into the data. A key thing to remember for any type of tool question that you get, whether it's Splunk or QRadar or any others, it's really more about knowing what the type of tool does at a kind of a high level or 10,000 foot level, especially for Tier 1 or Level 1 SOC analyst roles. That's more important than knowing everything about that particular tool. Because you may be an expert in Splunk, or you may have a lot of experience in Splunk, but maybe the company is using QRadar. So you're not going to be an expert in every single tool that's out there. There's literally thousands of security tools out there. But just understand, like, what does this tool actually do? Like, what's the purpose of a SIM solution? Question number 3, what is data loss prevention, or also called DLP? So data loss prevention is basically you and your organization will identify certain types of data, classify the data, prioritize it, understand any risks to it, understand what sensitive data is, whether that's data at rest or in transit. And then in addition to that, data loss prevention involves monitoring that data, again, whether at rest or in transit, creating controls around protecting that data. So using things like encryption. And all of that is designed to help protect that data against theft during an incident, theft from an insider threat, accidental distribution of the data. So maybe someone doesn't mean to leave something unsecured, but they do. So DLP is a process around all of that, and basically just helping to protect that sensitive and or critical data for the organization. Question number 4, what is residual risk? So all residual risk is the risk that remains after you implement some type of security control. And oftentimes companies will accept that level of risk. If we take it in a different context, if we think of a boat and we've got a boat in the water, and let's say we have a really big hole in the bottom of our boat, and so it's starting to sink, but we don't have enough. Let's just say that in our example, we've got some putty that we can put at the bottom of the boat and that will patch it up. But we don't have enough putty to cover the entire hole. So we cover up, let's say, 99% of the hole. And there's still a tiny little hole left. But there's not enough water coming through that tiny little hole to sink the ship, and we have enough time to get back to shore safely. So residual risk in that example would be we've implemented a security control, or a control, which in this case would be the putty, putting that over the hole, but there's a small hole left that we don't have enough putty to cover, and that's that residual risk. We accept that there's a little bit of water coming in, but we also know that because of the control we've put in place, we have enough time to get back to safety. Question number 5, what is the CIA triad? So this is actually probably one of the most common questions you'll actually get in any entry-level cybersecurity role. It doesn't matter whether it's SOC analyst, pen tester, or whatever. So CIA triad, the CIA part stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. What does that even mean? Confidentiality is basically just making sure that the right people, the right systems, or the right applications can access the correct data, and that nobody else or no other entities can access that. So think of it like you're locking your data in a safe, and you're only giving people access or things access that you trust. Integrity is essentially just making sure that the data hasn't been altered. So, for example, if we think of healthcare and a patient's chart and blood pressure medication, if a doctor is using that patient's chart and the blood pressure measurements each time they come into the office to then adjust their medication so that way they can lower their blood pressure and be safe and curb off any future issues, if we go in as a bad hacker and we go in and we alter that data, and this has actually happened in the real world for a organization I worked with, if we alter that patient data, then the doctor is prescribing that medication based off the numbers that they're seeing. So they may prescribe the wrong dose of medication, which could cause harm to a patient. And that's what happened in the example I'm speaking about. So that's why data integrity is so important, and not just in healthcare, but across the board. And then finally, availability. Availability is just making sure that the right users or systems, people, applications, etc., can access the right information when they actually need to. So as an example, in some industries, like critical infrastructure, for example, the availability of data or services, that comes before confidentiality and integrity on the list of prioritization, because for example, if you think of the power grid, we got to keep that up, right? So yes, maybe people or things that shouldn't have access might get access to certain data, but is the power grid still up? Can people still, for example, with a water facility, can people still get the water they need? Is the water still being cleaned properly, or is it being contaminated? So that's why availability in certain instances will take a priority over the others.